Alright, welcome. We are going to today set up a remote server with Dreamweaver, AWS on an ec2 instance, and we will make that uh, also a Git repository so we can store our code in in two locations other than our server where people see it, on our local computer, and we can save every version of our website on GitHub. And that's just good development practice, and it'll back up our website uh, on GitHub as well, so we can always roll back to a previous state of our website if something goes awry. Um, to I'm going to start introducing the basics of Bootstrap, how you use it, how you go and get templates and refine them to suit your needs. This will be a Bootstrap tutorial as well. I'll assume that you know the basics of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for this tutorial. This advanced topic tutorial. See my earlier tutorials on setting up an AWS ec2 instance for a WordPress website. This website's going to be Bootstrap based, but the same ec2 instance that you set up your WordPress website on can also be the website for your Bootstrap HTML code. And finally, we'll commit those files and push them to our Git version control repository on GitHub, and then we will push the files finally that we made, the Bootstrap files, to our remote website, and they will be online for the world to see. So let's get started. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is open Adobe Dreamweaver, and we need to define a site. So the site that we're going to use, continuing from my earlier tutorials where I showed how to set up a Amazon Web Services AWS ec2 website, I still have this this band website I made with WordPress up on an ec2. So I'm just going to use the same ec2 IP as the basis, as the root directory for my site that I'm going to build now with Bootstrap, so coding by hand, having total control over the HTML and JavaScript and CSS. We're going to use the same server for that. So in Dreamweaver now we need to hook up Dreamweaver to that remote server. So I've copied, about to paste the public IP, so this, because we're going to need that in just a second when we set up our site. So to set up a remote site, we go to Site, New Site, give it a name, and we're going to store it in a local place. So I'll make a new folder in my Documents folder. I'll make a new folder. There we go. Select that. So that's going to be where the local files stay. So when I'm developing on my local computer, before I push them up to my server, they're going to be in that location. Now I want to associate that with a Git repository, and what we're going to do is we're going to clone using an existing Git repository URL. So let's go make a Git repository on GitHub. So now I'm switching back to my Chrome browser and I'm on GitHub, and I want to go to New Repository, give it a name, and create. Okay, so now I have this HTTPS. I'm going to copy that, go back to Dreamweaver, and put that URL in. And then I'm going to use my username, which is the email that I signed up for GitHub with. So that'll be your email and my password. And I'll save credentials and test it first to make sure that I can successfully connect to the remote and save. Alright, I'm going to close down these. And you'll see over here now I have a local files and some options here. So now I need to connect that site that I've just made to my remote ec2 instance, my server. So I want to go to Manage Sites. There's Web Dev Tutorial. That's the one we were modifying. I'm going to double click on that, and I'm going to go to Servers. So I need to add a server. So I clicked on the little plus. The server name we'll just call Tutorial. And the connection, you'll notice we have port 21 here, and it's asking us to connect with FTP by default. Now, if you look over at our Amazon Web Services console, this ec2 instance we've set up, we can select it and then take a look at its security groups down here and view the inbound rules. And when we set up the ec2, we allowed communication with this remote server computer, this remote Linux instance, on a few ports. So ports are just channels of communication that the computer has with the world. So port 80 is for our HTTP for web traffic. Port 22 is for SSH, and port 43 is for our MySQL, I believe. But you notice we don't have port 21, so we could either enable that by launching our security groups wizard and adding a custom rule for port 21, or over on Dreamweaver, since we know we have a more secure than FTP secure file transfer protocol, port 22, since we know we have that connection anyway, we could use better encryption than FTP, much better, and public private key encryption. And so let's do that. So for the site address, I'm just gonna paste in that IP. I'm gonna go get that IP first, and then paste it in our public IP. So if I go, get out of here. So if I go to the ec2 instances I have running, you'll see over here we have this public IP, which I will grab and put in here. And we want to connect using a private key file. The username is just like in MOBA Xterm. When we set up our ec2 instance, is going to be ec2 user, and the identity file is going to be the the .pem secret key that you downloaded when you set up your ec2 instance. There's no passphrase. The root directory here, we'll have to give it the path to our HTML folder where people see web traffic. Now, if you set up your WordPress website on the ec2 at the root directory here, this would be where your WordPress site is. And so you would need to make a new folder for this Bootstrap website. If you made a folder like WordPress for your WordPress website, then you can use this root directory just from the HTML. But so let's see what the state of my ec2 instance is in terms of its directory structure. So I'm going to fire up moba xterm to do that and connect to my ec2 instance by SSH. I'm going to click down here so you can see over here where I'm going as I cd around. So let's go to that directory that I'm telling Dreamweaver currently to go to as the root directory of the website. And you'll see that I do actually have all my WordPress files at the root directory here. So I'm going to make a new directory with the makedir command, mkdir, and I'm going to call it website. Well, let's give it a better name. Web Dev Tutorial. The names for these don't matter as long as you keep them consistent. And so you'll see now that I have that Web Dev Tutorial folder here, and if we refresh this, you'll be able to see it here as well. Alright, so that's the path that I want my website to be at. I want everything to be in here. So if I cd to Web Dev Tutorial, there's nothing in it. Let's put a file in it. We can just do a README file, and you don't have to do this part. I just want to do it for testing purposes. I'm gonna just do testing remote server. So I'm just making a file, and so that there's something in this folder that that I can see, and I'll change the permissions on that to 27. Well, 644. Oops. Okay. Just so that I can read it from Dreamweaver. So now, what was the name of that path? Web Dev Tutorial. Alright. So now in Dreamweaver, I'm going to add Web Dev Tutorial to the root directory path, and test that. So it connected successfully, and so now I'm going to save. So I have a remote server now. So let's save that. Alright. We're done with connecting to our remote server. So we're looking at the local view right now, and there are no files in this. So if I switch now to my remote server, it's going to ask me for a passphrase. We don't have a passphrase, so I'm just going to hit OK. We should see that README file. So the README file is on my remote server, and it's not on my local computer. So from my local computer, I want to get files from remote server, this little down arrow, and I want to get all the so if I hit OK here, what it's going to do is download all the WordPress files I have to. And at this point, that's okay with me. I want a backup of my WordPress content anyway, so let's just do that. And I will pause the video and be right back when that is finished. Okay, so fortunately, because we specified the path, we did not get all the WordPress files, which is great. That's exactly what I wanted to happen. I didn't expect that to happen, but that's alright. Alright, so what we have now is this README, and we have it on our local view. So let's make a change to that README. Let's open with Atom actually, let's open our Git file here. So in GitHub now, we have this remote repository, so let's see if we can push that README that we now have on our local computer up to this repository. Okay, so what I want to do is I have this untracked file. I check it. I'm going to click that to commit, and I'm going to say adding README. Okay, and now I want to push that up to my remote server. That's all fine. Let's make sure that Git is working fine now. Alright, successfully pushed new ref. Cool. So now if I go to Git and go to this, we'll see we have a commit. So we have a backup now of the state of our website, which is just a README file at this point that says testing remote server. And we have it on Git as well as on our local computer, as well as on this remote server. Alright, so from here on out, what we're going to do is start developing some Bootstrap code in Dreamweaver, and we're going to develop it on our local computer, and then we're going to push that. Once we're done, well, first we're going to commit the files we make to Git, so we have a copy online of a version of our website at that state and time, and then we're going to push from our local view up to our remote server with this the files that we change. And so when we finally go to our remote server, we should see those files. Okay, so that is the setup for your web development environment using Dreamweaver and Git and AWS. Let's do a quick test by just dragging some code in. So I will, here's an index. Let's see what it looks like. Alright, so that's fine as a test. Actually, let's make a totally new file. So new, over here, let's do new file and call it index.html, and let's start modifying that in Dreamweaver. So the only thing I want to do is in body just add a h1 that says hello world, and I'm going to save that. And so it's saved now to my local view. If we go now in our browser to this our public IP, right, the IP of our ec2 instance right here, and then add in the path from our HTML directory, which was web dev tutorial, and then we could do index.html, or we could just leave it blank. Right now we'll see nothing, right? We'll just see an index because there's nothing on our remote server. On our local server, though, we have this file, which just has a hello world, right? h1. So if we push, so let's first make sure that we can send this to Git. So we'll check it, we'll stage it, and we'll say first commit, or second commit actually, committing index.html starter. Okay, and then push that to Git. Okay, very easy. Much easier than using the GitHub desktop app in my opinion, but it's good to know how to do that in case in case you switch IDEs or something goes wrong with this IDE. So now if we check GitHub, we'll have the next version of our website backed up with an index and that nice commit message, and we can see the code change right there. And now let's push that up to this server. So to do that, Very simple. All we're going to do, since we're connected to our remote server and we're on our local view, is put files to remote server, and we have that file selected. So it's going to go ahead and do that. File activity complete. Now if we go to our remote server, we'll see that hello world. And there's our index file. We can look at the source code right there. Right. Okay, that is how to set up Dreamweaver for very efficient and safe and industry standard workflow to a remote AWS server, and backing up your code with GitHub at every step of the way. Thank you for listening. Next tutorial, we will go over how to use Bootstrap to quickly get a professional quality looking website up and running using Dreamweaver and this environment setup. Thanks.